Hey guys, I hope you are doing well. So in today's video we are going to discuss the answers to my latest post on LinkedIn, that is Salesforce LWC most commonly asked interview questions. We are going to discuss the solutions for this. So let's get into it. So first of all, let's go with the beginner questions first. The first question itself is explain the different decorators used in LWC. So we know that the different decorators that we have in Salesforce LWC is wire, track, and API decorator. So this question is like most commonly asked, and you can expect this interview question in 2 years of experience or even 4 years of experience. The next follow-up question could be what does these decorators do? So wire decorator is used when you want to fetch data from um, the database of Salesforce, right? And what does track decorator do? A component reactive, meaning that whenever the components data is refreshed, the components it's the component itself will get refreshed. For example, let's say this let's assume that this is a page and this part is just the component. So whenever you annotate this with track, then if whenever the value for that property changes, the component itself will get refreshed. Next up, what is API decorator? So API decorator, we have to pass data between child to parent. Okay. Next question, how do you handle events in LWC? Okay. So to handle events in LWC, you will have to attach an event listener in the um, parent. Okay, in the parent, for example, let's say you have this parent HTML file, something like this, and here you have one a child that is embedded into it. So this child component has a event listener attached to it called on notification, and this is the event handler associated to that. The handler function, that is the handle notification, will be also defined in the JavaScript. Okay, so this handle function will be there in the JavaScript file of the parent. So in the child component you will be creating the event, and that event will be handled in the parent component. So for example, in this one we have this on notification, so there will be a function there will be a custom event called notification in the child component. So let's say child, first the HTML and the JS, where we will have some event called handle change, and in that particular event creating basically some custom event called some select event equals to new custom event. And by the way, the interviewer might ask you to create one on the go, to just to test out your knowledge on this, so be ready for that as well. Here you may provide a detailed name for it, and lastly you just need to um, dispatch this particular event by doing dispatch event, and the event name, actually event name, that is this one. So this will basically dispatch the event, and in when you are referencing this child HTML in your parent, will have this on notification present there. Okay, cool. So there are some things that might come as a cross question on this, that what is the naming convention for defining the names of the events that you have, right? So you can have uppercase letter, no underscores for to separate the words, and no spaces are allowed. So this might also get asked to you. Okay, what is the role of Lightning Data Service in LWC? As the name suggests, Lightning Data Service, meaning it has something to do with the data, right? So basically, why do we use and what is the role of Lightning Data Service is it's a tool provided by Salesforce that allows LWC to get Salesforce data without the need of writing any Apex code. So Apex code is not required. So it's like client side, it's the server side, that is the Apex code part that is not required to fetch the data. That's why LDS is used. Now in LDS we have term different types of LDS, that is lightning record form, lightning record edit form, and lightning record view form. So you just need to tell all these things to the interviewer, and a follow-up question would be to uh, tell me the differences between lightning record form, lightning record view form, and lightning record edit form. So there are few things that you need to consider when answering this question. Yeah, see here. So we have whenever you are doing a create record, you can make use of lightning record form but not view form. And similarly, you can make use of lightning record edit form when you are creating the records. Okay, so just go through this and answer accordingly. Moving on to the next question. Describe the lifecycle hooks in LWC for parent-child component with an example. So, for example, here they have asked specifically for parent-child component with an example, right? So this is a diagram that you will find on the trailhead. So here the starting, right, the lifecycle hooks starting point is the constructor itself where the component is initialized. Then comes the connected callback, and then the rendered callback is called after the rendering occurs. So and after that the disconnected callback is called. So that is like the usual path, but in this question they have asked specifically for parent to child, right? So you'll have to explain this particular diagram. So this is your component and the constructor is called on parent, and then it will see whether you have a public property that is pending to be updated. If it is a yes, if it is there, then it will update the pending property. Otherwise the component will be inserted into the DOM. Next up, the connected callback will be called and the parent will be rendered. Next, the same thing will happen with the child as well. So the constructor will be called on child. Then again, there will be it will check whether the public property needs to be updated on the child component. Next, the child will be inserted into the DOM. Then connected callback will be called on child, and then the child will get rendered, then the rendered callback will be called on child, and lastly the rendered callback will be called on parent. So see here, there is a slight difference here. Whenever you are asked for parent to child, so the parent DOM will not be the rendered callback will not be called on the parent first. Instead, the child records will get rendered first, and then the rendered callback will be called on the parent component. So just bear this in mind. You don't need to draw this diagram or anything, just explain it in simple words. Okay, moving on to the next question. We are now at the intermediate part. So the interviewer might ask you that have you used disconnected callback, and explain the scenarios you might have used this. So what exactly, first let's understand what is exactly disconnected callback. So whenever a component is removed from the DOM, then this lifecycle hook is called, and basically it is called for cleaning up WC component from the canvas and releasing the resources that it has, right? So this is the first part. Now the second part is explain the scenario where you might have used this. So let's say that you have an event listener on your LWC component that is listening to some event, right? And what you want to do is whenever you are going to the next page or going to any other component, that event listener should be removed. So what you will do is in the disconnected callback you will just mention that just to remove that event listener, and just mention the name of the event listener, right? This handle scroll will be like a method, so don't worry about that. Just you need to mention the name of the event in the disconnected callback. another example could be whenever you are clearing the timers. Let's say you have interval timer. The time of connected callback, you are starting a timer which will be incrementing the seconds, right? So when you are calling the disconnected callback, you can make sure that you are clearing that interval timer. So this prevents the timer from running indefinitely and consuming the resources even when the component is no longer in view. So what will happen? This will ensure that there are no lingering in event listeners, which could lead to memory leaks in the system. Okay. Okay, next question. Why do we use cacheable true when using wire decorator, and why not an imperative call? So again, this is a very commonly asked question. Now first understand why do we use cacheable true and where do we use it exactly. So whenever you are writing any Apex class to get data from Salesforce database, you will mention it as Aura enabled, and also you will mention the cacheable true if you want to make use of wire decorators here. Now then you will write whatever the the method is and all those things. But why do we use this cacheable equals to true? Okay, why do we use that? This is to improve basically the web page performance, and Salesforce has provided this to cache the Apex methods so that it improves the performance of the component. If the data is already present in the cache, then it will no longer make a call or make a hit to the database, and right, that hit to a database is like an expensive query that the system would do. So to eliminate that, the cacheable equals to true is there. If the data is already there in the cache, so it won't make any query to the database directly, it will get you the data from the cache itself. So there's an expiration age for this cache, and in Winter 21 this duration was set to 8 hours. And what is a refresh? There is also a refresh interval attached to this, and it is set to 15 minutes. So this is like this parameter will regulate how long the cache remains usable before requiring a refresh. Okay, so when you are using wire, you need to make use of cacheable equals to true. Now when you are making an imperative call, meaning that you are clicking on some button, let's say the swipe is a button and you are clicking on that, then in that case that is called an imperative call out, that you are calling it imperatively, and this wire decorator calling it whenever the component is loaded. Okay, so in imperative call, it's like whenever you're clicking on any method, it requires a manual user intervention, user interaction, and this wire decorator will fetch the data regardless of anything. Why not call this an imperative call? Because the data could get stale, it's no longer usable, the cache data is no longer usable, so that's why we don't call it an imperative call. Now when to call Apex method is imperatively whenever, as I said, it requires a manual intervention, the user's intervention or interaction. Whenever you're clicking on any button or something like that, then you will require to call the Apex methods imperatively. Now moving to the next question, how to call LWC component from a flow or a process builder. Call an LWC component from a flow. Basically there are C3 files that we have, that is HTML, JavaScript, and a meta XML file. So in the meta XML file, what you need to do is you need to add a lightning underscore flow screen as a target into that meta XML file, so that the LWC appears in the flows screen builder. Okay, and next, what is the difference between event stop propagation and event prevent default? So this question is recently, like, it was asked to one of my friends, so let's discuss this now. Event.stop propagation, what it does is it prevents an event from bubbling up the event chain, that is going up the event chain. Okay, and what does event.prevent default do is it prevents the default behavior of any element from happening. For example, if it's a button, the default the default thing that it will do is it will try to submit things, right? So if you write prevent default, so it will not try to submit anything. So that's the difference. Next question. Now these are the advanced one. Let's discuss them one by one. Okay, so before writing the code snippet, let's understand how the data is actually passed from parent to child and vice versa. So to pass data from parent to child, we will use properties, right? So from parent to child, we can pass data in between these two components using properties and basically decorating them with at the rate at API decorator. And from child to parent, we will be passing the data using custom events as we discussed earlier, right? And what is event bubbling? Event bubbling is nothing but the default behavior that is for the custom events. So let's see this as an example through code. Okay, so I have written the same thing that we just discussed. So let's say that you have a parent component and the parent component has a property called as message from, sorry, parent message, and we'll just say hello from parent component. Parent component itself, we have this child component, parent equals to this property that is parent message. Okay, and so what's going to happen here? What's going to happen here is that this particular message from parent, this is actually going to be defined in the child component, and this should be at API decorated. So here is your child component, and in this child component we'll have this at API decorated message from parent, and instead of kebab case, make it as camel case message from parent. And this message from parent, what is that message? The message is parent message. Where is that parent message coming from? This is coming from the parent. Okay, this is the parent.js. This parent message is is a property that is defined in parent.js. Okay, so this is how you can communicate from parent to child. So we'll have this at the rate API decorator property, and this property is actually not set in the child component, instead it is set in the parent component. Okay, cool. Next up we have child to parent communication. So child to parent communication happens using custom events as we discussed. So in the child component we'll have to create, as we discussed, something called as a custom event. Okay, so this custom event will be fired whenever in the child component, whenever we click on this button with that has this handle click associated to it. So this will fire a new custom event called as child message, and this child message will have a detail called as hello from child component, meaning that this is the data that is being passed from child to parent. And bubbles here is true and composed here is also true. I'll explain that to you in a second. And we have this lastly this patch event. Now this particular child message needs to be handled in here, that is the child component itself. Here we will have something called on child message, on child message, and we'll have handle child event, and this particular event handle child event will be part of your parent.js. This one, first of all, we are getting the event.detail. Okay, since we were passing value from here, that is hello from child component, so we are just getting it as a parameter here and getting that detail part of it. Here is the child message, and basically we're just in the end alerting, creating alert saying that received message from child. And what is the actual message? This is the message. This all is enclosed in this symbol. Okay, so it's there in the child message. Okay, so that's how you handle propagation of data from child to parent. And now let's discuss what is bubbles equals to true and why we have set compose equals to true. So the custom event that we are firing from the child message, right? This child message, it's created with bubbles true and compose true, allowing this to bubble up through the DOM document object model and to be handled by the parent component. So here we are handling it as well, right? So um, that's why we have made it as bubbles true and compose true. You can read more about it, and this is like a simple example on that. Okay, coming to another question, create a LWC component to show accounts email and phone number. To do this, you will have to first of all extract the account ID. How would you do that? Just make use of at API API record ID, and if the component is placed on a lightning record page, then it will fetch you the record ID of from the lightning page itself. What you need to do here is that you need to first of all get the ID and pass it as a parameter to, let's say, a wire Apex method to get the account's email and phone number, and just display it on the component. So you can try it out. It's not that difficult. So next question, how to call an external JavaScript library from a LWC component. You need to first of all import. First of all, you need to upload that upload the external JavaScript library into Salesforce using by going to static resources in the setup page of Salesforce and then uploading it there. Next, what you would need to do is you would then need to import library, the static resource, into LWC. So what basically you would have to write is in the JS, in the JavaScript file, you would have to first of all import the this from the resource URL, and whatever the name of external library would be, you just need to mention that. And also you will have to import platform resource loader. So this platform resource loader method will be imported into your JavaScript file. So here in this platform, so this load script is used to load the JavaScript libraries. Now this platform resource loader has two methods, that is load script and load style. We have made use of load script here. So the follow-up interview question could be, how would you import an external CSS file into your LWC component? So there you can make use of load style instead of load script from platform resource loader. Okay, next question, let's see, why do we use dollar when passing property in wire function? So we use dollar because this dollar makes it as a reactive variable. So whenever a reactive variable's value changes, the wire service provisions new data. So for example, here we have this wire decorator and that has a get record with the record ID of this, and we see we have this dollar symbol just before that. So it is basically to signify that it should be used as a reactive property for that wire method, and whenever the data or this particular record ID changes, it should provision a new data. Next up, what is a promise in asynchronous transactions, and where have you used promise in your projects? So basically promises are, we don't know whether the transaction is going to be successful, or it might get failed as well. So in such cases, if in an asynchronous transaction results in promise, that is, we might get the data, or we might get a failure from it. So promise is basically to handle such asynchronous transaction. Where have you used promises in your project? So whenever you call data from Salesforce imperatively by using imperative Apex calls, you will be doing a promise that will be returning a promise. And how a promise is defined, so promises will be something like this. Whenever let's say you have this load greeting, and this load greeting has this method called as get greeting message. This get greeting message could be a part of an Apex controller, and that is an Apex imperative call. Then it will result in this result. It could be then, and then it could be a catch, right? What is then this will then means that it is a positive outcome, and catch means that it has resulted in an error. So this is like a basic syntax for this. Next question, difference between PubSub and LMS. So what is LMS? First of all, it is Lightning Messaging Service. And what is the difference between these two? First of all, let's understand why to use this PubSub and LMS, right? So right now we have established that whenever you need to pass data or do communication from parent to child, we will use properties. Whether when you have to pass data or do communication from child to parent, you will use custom events. But what if there's a third type, right? What if there is unrelated component, not related, they are not child to parent or parent to child, they are completely unrelated. So in such cases we will go with LMS, that is Lightning Messaging Service, and or a PubSub library. So LMS is like a native solution for inter-component communication in Salesforce. Okay, so the advantage of using LMS is that it allows us to communicate between Lightning Web Components or a components and Salesforce pages directly, right? But in PubSub there is you cannot do that. Okay, so how do we first of all understand how do we make use of LMS? So we'll have to create a communication channel, messaging channel when using Lightning Messaging Service, and create the meta XML file and all those things for that. When using a PubSub library, you will be using also, won't be have to do this declarative things. You just have to use the PubSub utility for that and start using, subscribe, publish events and all those things. So the basic differences between them is LMS is cross framework communication. It will support communication between LWC or and Visualforce, and PubSub is like it's used within LWC, right? Um, Complexity wise, PubSub is simpler to use with just the JavaScript utility, and with LMS you will have to create the messaging channels and all those things. The use case, developing complex or large scale application, in that case go with LMS. Whenever you are building small simpler application, then go with PubSub. Okay, so yeah, let's see the next question. How to refresh cache when calling method imperatively? So this would be like a trick question because the cache is generally involved when using wire decorators, right? So when you're doing an imperative call, that means that when on a click of a button, the server call is sent and the data is received, right? So in that case, you don't need to have the cache refreshed because cache is not at all, involved in that. If you search for the documentation on this question, you won't find much answers to that as well. Okay, so how do you refresh the cache when calling a method imperatively? You do not, right? If this was asked on how do you refresh the cache when calling wire methods, then that would be a different scenario. So when you're calling Apex methods in wire, we know that the cache could be stale, right? If the cache is stale, then the component needs to be uh, refresh the data. So in that case, we can make use of something called as refresh Apex. So you can just import this refresh Apex from Salesforce at Salesforce/Apex, and in your methods you can just simply call this refresh Apex at the end of it, so that it refreshes the data. Okay, next up, how to pass values among unrelated components. So this we just discussed, we can do that using PubSub and LMS. When to use PubSub and when to use LMS, we just discussed as well. PubSub is like simpler thing, and LMS, if you are developing large scale complex components, then you can use LMS. That's it guys. I hope you like this video and all the best for your next interview. Good luck, take care, bye bye.